Akira the Don is a British musician, DJ, and producer. He's worked in genres as diverse as pop, hip-hop, indie, dance, and more recently, perhaps, something that has come to be known as Meaning Wave.
I cut the speech up with the beat, added some crackling vinyl. The older I get, the more I know just how little I know. Most men live in one bad day away from being a wino. Many sing along, but how many can hit the high notes? But for the grace of God, go Ido. Hello, hi, pretty fly for someone from such a place as I. You might not walk, but you might fly, because we live in such a time. It's a beautiful day to be alive. I'm alive, from the peak of recorded human history. Hear that shout, because we live in Akira. He's got clout. I spoke that shit into existence. Perseverance plus persistence. Don't need motivation, we've got meaning. Discipline equals freedom, it's that. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. I took the speech, got that shit to the beat, it was sweet and that's how I made meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way.
A combination of metered spoken word and music chosen for its emotional and conceptual appropriateness from some of my sayings and my talks. Akira has also produced similar works featuring Ellen Watts, Jocko Willink, Terence McKenna, David Foster Wallace, and Elon Musk, among others. So, welcome, Akira. It's nice to talk to you. What are you up to?
Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. I took the speech, got that shit to the beat, it was sweet and that's how I made meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. I took the speech, got that shit to the beat, it was sweet and that's how I made meaning way. Meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way, meaning way. I'm engaged in an experiment in ridiculous hyperproductivity and the zone inhabitation. My idea being remaining in the zone of making music so the music flows and becomes better and better and better, and my whole process becomes more efficient and powerful with each thing.
Akira.
He's got clout. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. One heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone. And so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. Hold on.
present events as being caused by past events. And therefore, we tend to regard ourselves as the puppets of the past, as driven along by something that is always behind us. Now, to overcome this impression, it's very simple. You begin again with an experiment. Approach the world through your ears. If you shut your eyes and make contact with reality purely with your ears, and you will realize that the sounds you are hearing are all coming out of silence. You hear, and it fades away. Fades, 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 and finally disappears. It's a curious world, this, isn't it? Because you hear all the realities in it. The sounds, suddenly coming out of nothing. You don't see any reason for them to begin. They just appear, and then they echo away through the corridors of the mind, which we call memory. Now, if you open your eyes, it's a little harder to see this with your eyes because, unlike sounds, the eyes sound static. Or rather, they look static. Everything looks still to your eyes. But you must understand, the world you are looking at, say when you look at a light, that light is vibrating. All material things are vibrations, and they are vibrating at you now in the same way as the sound is vibrating on your ears. In other words, the present world that you see is a vibration coming just as the sound comes out of silence. The light is coming out of space. It's coming out of nothing straight at you now and echoing away into the past. So the course of time is really very much like the course of a ship in the ocean. Because here's the ship, you see, and it leaves behind it a wake. And the wake fades out, and that tells us where the ship has been, in just the same way as the past and our memory of the past tells us what we have done. But as we go back into the past, and we go back and back to prehistory, and we use all kinds of instruments and scientific methods for detecting what happened, we eventually reach a point where all record of the past fades away in just the same way as the wake of the ship. Now, the important thing to remember in this illustration is that the wake doesn't drive the ship any more than the tail wags the dog.
consummation of grief. I even hear the mountains, the way they laugh. Up and down their blue sides, and down in the water, the fish cry. And all the water is their tears. I listen to the water on nights I drink away. And the sadness becomes so great. I hear it in my clock. It becomes knobs upon my dresser. It becomes paper on the floor. It becomes a shoehorn, a laundry ticket. It becomes cigarette smoke climbing a chapel of dark vines. It matters little. Very little love is not so bad, or very little life. What counts is waiting on the wall. I was born for this. I was born to hustle roses down the avenues of the dead. I was born for this. I was born to hustle roses down the avenues of the dead. I was born for this. I was born to hustle roses down the avenues of the dead. I was born for this. I was born to hustle roses down the avenues of the dead. The dead. Into this, as the chalk faces smile, as Mrs. Death laughs, as political landscapes dissolve, as the oily fish spit out their oily prey. We are born like this, into hospitals which are so expensive that it's cheaper to die. Into lawyers who charge so much, it's cheaper to plead guilty. Into a country where the jails are full and the madhouses closed. Into a place where the masses elevate fools into rich heroes. Born into this, walking and living through this, dying because of this. Castrated, debauched, disinherited because of this. The fingers reach toward an unresponsive God. The fingers reach for the bottle, the pill, the powder. We are born into this sorrowful deadliness. There will be open and unpunished murder in the streets. It will be guns and roving mobs. Land will be useless. Food will become a diminishing return. Nuclear power will be taken over by the many. Explosions will continually shake the earth. Radiated men will eat the flesh of radiated men. The rotting bodies of men and animals will stink in the dark wind. And there will be the most beautiful silence never heard. hidden there, awaiting the next chapter.
Here we are. It's the beginning of another great day. A sunny, summer day. It's the best day. For, you know what. I'm going to read you a quote from Norm Macdonald. And he says this: the idiot sees the world as good versus evil. The cynic sees the world as evil versus evil. The truth that no one seems to be able to see is that the world is, and always has been, a battle of good versus good. Versus good. Good. Versus good. Good. Versus good. Wow. This is actually really profound. This is the situation we find ourselves in. There are not two sides in which one is good and one is evil. There are two sides in which one feels that it is good and it believes, incorrectly, that the other one is evil. But both sides are pretty sure that their version of the world is the good one. Wow. The world is, and always has been, a battle of good versus good. Versus good. Good. Versus good. Good. Versus good. Good. Versus good.
Don't I know it?
Wow. 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 Wow.
The reason why I got everything's a scam in a neon sign in my apartment is because I think that's the most optimistic message you can think of every day. So I wanted to remind myself of that every morning when I woke up.
And the reason why I think it's optimistic is that you see all these different problems, right? And all these things in the world. And you're like, well, I don't understand that thing. Like, I don't understand.
In my case,
Longevity research and science and hard work. I don't understand any of these things in a deeply technical way. But I want to affect them. A lot of the reasons why people don't go into different fields is they think, well, there's this kind of expert status around this field, which means I can't ever infiltrate it. And the thing that I want to remember every day is that expertise is a scam.
Expertise is a scam.
It's like a power hierarchy that's been created within an industry to prevent other people from being able to go and get into it. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. remembering everything is a scam is important is that it boosts your self-efficacy to remind yourself that if everything's a scam, then if you have high integrity and you want to go solve a problem, it's probably the case that it'll take you pretty far. Take you pretty far. Take you pretty far. Like more far than trying to play the traditional game, which is a scam. So, to me, everything is a scam is not a negative thing. It's a reminder to just play the game. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. You know? Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. You know? Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. Any game you want to play, just go play it. It's just a fucking game. You know? Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. Academia is a scam. Venture capital is a scam. Everything's a fucking scam. Right? But if you realize that, then you can do anything. And you can do anything. You can do anything. You can do anything.
Human beings are entirely creatures of habit. Young children are born with no habit loops. They're essentially born as blank slates. And then they habituate themselves to things and they learn patterns and they get conditioned and they use that to get through everyday life. And habits are good. Habits are good. Habits are good. Habits can allow you to background process certain things. So habits are good so that your frontal lobe stays available to solve brand new problems. So unconsciously pick up habits in the background and we keep them for decades and we may not realize that they're bad for us. So we're ready to move on from them. To some extent, our attitude in life, our mood, our happiness levels, depression levels, these are also habits. Do we judge people? Habits. How often do we eat? What kinds of food do we eat? Habits. Do we walk or do we sit? Do we move? Do we exercise? Habits. Do we read? Do we read? Do we read? These are habits as well. You absolutely need habits to function. You cannot solve every problem in life as if it's the first time it's thrown at you. What we do is we accumulate all these habits, we put them in the bundle of identity, ego, ourselves, and then we get attached to that. I'm Shane, this is the way I am. I'm Naval, this is the way I am. It's really important to be able to uncondition yourself, to be able to take your habits apart and say, oh, okay, well that's a habit that I probably picked up from when I was a toddler and I was trying to get my parents' attention. And now I've just reinforced it and reinforced it and reinforced it, and I call it part of my identity. But is it serving me anymore? Is it making me happier? Is it making me healthier? Is it making me accomplish whatever I want to set out to accomplish right now? And so I think you can uncondition yourself. You can untrain yourself. It's just hard. It takes work. It takes effort. And usually the big habit changes come when there's strong desire motivators attached to them. Habits are good. Habits are good. Habits are good. Habits are good.
Akira.
He's got clout.
Let's welcome to the stage Mr. Gary Vaynerchuk.
All right, let's go. Let's sit down. Let's do this. I wish we had better perspective. I wish that there was some weird genie that could take us back into time so that every one of you could live one fucking day in your great-great-grandparents' shoes and understand how fucking good you have it. Like if you really, really understood I'm not naive to what's happening in our society. Let me just say this very clear so everybody gets it through their fucking dome. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the best. This is the best. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. Fascinated by this. Fascinated by fucking mindset. It's a binary decision if you're gonna be positive or negative about shit. When you bet on optimism, when you're on the offense, when you are playing towards intangibles, you do something super duper interesting. You start suffocating excuses. If you asked me what the number one thing is that I'm thankful for that my parents gave me, taking me from a communist country and moving me to the US, parenting me well, roof and clothes, if you ask me the number one thing I wake up every morning and thank that my parents did, is I never saw either one of them complain about jack shit. And it basically created learned behavior for me. I am incapable of actually complaining about shit. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the best. This is the best. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the best. We have it the best. And all I see is people sitting around dwelling around dumb shit, what they don't have, instead of focusing on what they do have. The internet is a fucking miracle. It's a fucking miracle. The internet is a fucking miracle. It's a fucking miracle. There was no side hustle for your great-grandparents. When it was 9 p.m., it was dark and cold outside. We just get used to shit so fast. And in our speed of getting used to how fucking awesome it is, I'm just desperate for you to not lose perspective. The greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. This is the best. This is the best. This is the greatest year to ever be alive in the history of mankind. My grandfathers had the same exact thing that I had, and because they were Jewish in communist Russia post-World War II, their communism put them both in jail for 10 years in Siberia. Like, just think about that. Timing, opportunity. Yes. Life is binary. It's either offense or defense. You are either sitting in your seat right now on the offense or you're not. There is no fucking half pregnant. There's no in between. You're either this or that.
Akira.
The Dawn.
He's got clout. You know, in Sleeping Beauty goes to sleep. And the reason she goes to sleep is because he has parents who are quite old. And so they're pretty desperate to have a child, like so many people are now. And they only have one child, like so many people do now. They don't want anything to happen to this child, because like, hey, it's a miracle. And she's the princess. We're not letting anything around her. So they have a big christening party. And they invite everybody, but they don't invite Maleficent. And Maleficent is the terrible mother. She's nature, the thing that goes bump in the night. She's the devil herself, so to speak. She's everything that you don't want your child to encounter. So the king and queen saying, well, we just won't invite her to the christening. It's like, good luck with that. That's an Oedipal story. The mother who devours her child by overprotecting him or her. Instead of being strengthened by an encounter with the terrible world, they're weakened by too much protection. And then when they're let out into the world, they cannot live. And that's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. And they apologize to Maleficent when she first shows up and say, well, you know, they have a bunch of half-witted excuses why they don't invite her. We forgot. It's like, I don't think so. You don't forget something like that. And she kind of makes that point. It's right, the whole horror of life. You don't forget about that when you have a child. That's for sure. You might wish that it would stay at bay, but you do not forget about it. The question is, do you invite it to the party? And the answer is, it bloody well depends how unconscious you want your child to be. And if you want your child to be unconscious, well, then you have the added advantage that maybe they won't leave home. And so you can take advantage of them for the rest of your sad life instead of going off to find something to do for yourself. Of course, you could take revenge on them if they do have any impetus towards courage that you sacrificed yourself 30 years ago and want to stamp out as soon as you see it develop in your child. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. That's another thing that would be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. Be quite pleasant. So that's what happens in Sleeping Beauty. That's the story of 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 Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, well, none of this is pleasant, and nothing that happens in that story is pleasant. So Sleeping Beauty, she's naive as hell. They put her out in the forest and have her raised by these goody two-shoes fairies. And then the first idiot prince that wanders by, she falls in love with so badly that she has post-traumatic stress disorder when he rides off on his horse. That's what happens. Then she goes into the castle and she's all freaked out because she met the love of her life like 5 minutes. That's when the spinning wheel, that's the wheel of fate, pops up and she pricks her finger. They try to get rid of all the spinning wheels. They try to get rid of all the wheels of fate with their pointed end. She finds it, pricks her finger, falls down unconscious. Well, she wants to be unconscious, and no bloody wonder. She was protected her whole life. She's so damn naive that her first love affair just about kills her. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. Never wake up. Never wake up. She wants to go to sleep and never wake up. And so that's exactly what happens. And then she has to wait for the prince to come and rescue her. You think, how sexist can you get? That's a boneheaded way of looking at the story, because the prince isn't just a man who's coming to rescue the woman. The prince also represents the woman's own consciousness. That's the story of Sleeping Beauty. 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 Without that forward-going, courageous consciousness, a woman herself will drift into unconsciousness and terror. All she can do is lay there and sleep, like the sleep of the naive and damned. She has to wake herself up, bring her own consciousness, her own masculine consciousness into the forefront so that she can survive in the world. Unless the woman is taken out of man, so to speak, then she isn't a human being. She's just a creature, and that's partly what's embedded in this story. So you don't want to read it as a patriarchal. You don't want to read anything that way.
Akira.
those that are supposedly born and never lose touch with the knowledge of their true nature. They are not much help to humanity because they don't know how to meet anybody where they are. In order to be of help to humanity, you have to take the pathways yourself. You have to take the pathways yourself that you are then going to suggest to others. And those are beautiful comment Darfrey John made. He said a beautiful thing. He said, I had to become like you so that you could become like me. I had to become like you so that you could become like me. He claimed to have been born without forgetting his true nature. But he realized that he was of no use to humanity in that condition. So he consciously forgot his own nature so as to have to find pathways for himself back home in order to then make those pathways available to other people. And hence he said, I had to become like you in order for you to become like me. I had to become like you in order for you to become like me. I can't comment on his experience, but it's a beautiful idea. Even if one is born in the full knowledge of one's divine identity, even so, to be of service to your community, you would have to forget that and find pathways yourself in order to make those pathways available for others. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. In order for you to become like me. For you to become like me. For you to become like me. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. In order for you to become like me. For you to become like me. For you to become like me. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. In order for you to become like me. For you to become like me. For you to become like me. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. I had to become like you. In order for you to become like me. For you to become like me. For you to become like me.
Akira. He's got clout. seems a good thing today turns out tomorrow to have been a disaster. What seemed in the moral and spiritual sphere too like great virtues in times past are easily seen today as hideous evils. Let's take, for example, the Inquisition.
In its own day, among Catholics, the Holy Inquisition was regarded as we today regard the practice of psychiatry. You see, you feel that in curing a person of cancer, almost anything is justified. The most complex operation, the most weird surgery. People suspended for days and days on end the end of tubes with X-ray penetration, burning, or people undergoing shock treatment, people locked in the colorless, monotonous corridor, mental institutions. In all good faith, they knew that witchcraft and heresy were terrible things. Awful plagues, imperiling people's souls forever and ever. So any means were justified to cure people of heresy. We don't change. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We can look back at those people and see how evil that was. But we can't see it in ourselves. So therefore, beware. Virtue. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. We don't change. We're doing the same thing today, but under different names. So therefore, beware. So therefore, beware of virtue. Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, said, "The highest virtue is not virtue, and therefore really is virtue. But inferior virtue cannot let go of being virtuous, and therefore is not virtue." Translated in more of a periphrastic way, the highest virtue is not conscious of itself as virtue, and therefore really is virtue. The highest virtue is not conscious of itself as virtue, and therefore really is virtue. Lower virtue is so self-conscious that it's not virtue. That it's not virtue. Lower virtue is so self-conscious that it's not virtue. That it's not virtue. In other words, when you breathe, you don't congratulate yourself on being virtuous. But breathing is a great virtue. It's living. congratulate yourself for having grown one of the most fabulous jewels on earth. So it's just eyes. And you don't account it a virtue. To see, to entertain the miracles of color and form. To say, oh, that's just... But that's real virtue. Real virtue. Real virtue. Real virtue. The highest virtue is not conscious of itself as virtue, and therefore really is virtue. The highest virtue is not conscious of itself as virtue, and therefore really is virtue. Lower virtue is so self-conscious that it's not virtue. That it's not virtue. Lower virtue is so self-conscious that it's not virtue. That it's not virtue. Real virtue. Virtue in the sense, the old sense of the word, a strength, is when we talk about the healing virtue of a plant. That's real virtue. That's real virtue. But the other virtues are stuck on. They're ersatz. They're imitation virtues. And they usually create trouble. Because more diabolical things are done in the name of righteousness. And be assured that everybody of whatever nationality or political frame of mind or religion always goes to war with a sense of complete rightness. The other side is the devil. Our opponents, whether in China or Russia or Vietnam, have the same feeling of righteousness about what they're doing as we have on our side. And a plague on both houses. Because, as Confucius said, the goody-goodies are the thieves of virtue.
One thing I might mention, most writers, and I think it's an unfortunate thing, they try to write something that they think a certain audience might enjoy. I've never been able to do that. because I can't put myself in the mind of other people. I only know what I enjoy. So every time I've written a story, I've always tried to write the sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. A story that would interest me while I'm writing it, as I'm waiting to find out what happens next. And I can't know what other people think, but I can know what I think. I can't know what other people think, but I can know what I think. And I feel I'm not that unusual. If there's a type of story I like, there must be lots of people who like the same type of stories. Therefore, I have always written to please myself, not to please a certain type of audience. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. Because you can't know the audience as well as you know yourself. And if I write a story that I'm enjoying while I'm writing it, and I can't wait to see what happens next, then I'm hoping that a large proportion of the public will feel the same way, and they'll enjoy it too. So to sum it up, I have always tried to please myself, not other people. And somehow it seems to have worked, because I guess I'm not that different than other people. I've always tried to write the sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. The sort of story that I myself would enjoy reading. So good luck to you. Thanks for listening, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Excelsior.
Akira.
The Dawn. He's got clout.
The title of these talks that I'm giving here is Mind Over Mind. And I'm going into all the various problems which have to do with the control of the mind. And so I might introduce what I'm going to say by saying it from different points of view. For example, if you're interested in communications, it will be the problem of feedback.
One of the things I tend to do is to look at symbolic representations through the lens of evolutionary biology, rather than assuming that these representations are mere superstitions or play no functions. Like we have the idea that there's a deity that's father-like. So it's a disembodied spirit in some sense that's eternal, that has eternal characteristics. It's like, okay, well, strip it of its metaphysics. If you strip it of its metaphysics and just look at it as a biological phenomena, it's like, well, what might the idea that there's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. What might that be a reflection of? Well, it's like, well, there's you imitating your father, but your father imitated his father, and his father, and his father, and his father imitated his father. So in some sense, what your father actually imitated was the pattern of fathers across time. And you can think of the transcendent father as the pattern of fathers across time. When a child imitates his father in pretend play, when I'm pretending to be my father, I'm observing my father across multiple situations. And then I'm abstracting out the commonalities in behavior and attitude across those situations that make him father. And then I incorporate that and dramatize it in my pretend play. It's unbelievably sophisticated. And so it's what the child is doing in pretend play is coming to embody the disembodied spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. And so you think, well, that is a disembodied spirit. It's a disembodied spirit that's incarnated in the collective of fathers across time. And what is that? Well, it's a judge, that's for sure. It's a judge. Even when you interact with the hierarchy of men who are currently alive, something can be abstracted out of that. It's like the patriarchal spirit. And if you don't think that's judging you, you are not thinking. It's absolutely judging you. That's what rank orders you in a hierarchy. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. There's an eternal spirit of the Father, spirit of the Father. You got to be oriented towards something, because otherwise you're disoriented. You just spin around in circles and then you suffer, and so do people around you. It's not a good solution. Orient yourself towards something. You have to figure out what it is. What will work for you? What goal would justify the suffering of your life? Start trying to piece that together. You're going to get better at it. But it's a personal process. So you need a personal place to stand, because otherwise you're going to be handed a place to stand on a plate. And it may be one that makes you a puppet of someone else's goals. So I would say, what are the processes? Well, I think what I've recommended to people is clean up your room. Clean up your room. Clean up your room. Clean up your room.
your room. That's a good start. Organize your local landscape. Schedule your time. Start taking control of yourself. See if you can stop saying things you know to be lies. That's not the same as telling the truth. You don't get to do that to begin with because you're not good enough at it to even attempt it in some sense. But everyone can stop saying things they know to be falsehoods. Stop saying things that violate your conscience. Here's another idea. Stop saying and doing things that make you feel weak. Because all you have to do is pay attention to that. Some things you do will make you feel disintegrated. It's a physiological sensation. Some things improve your integrity and some things disintegrate you. Now, the things that disintegrate you, you often do to impress other people, or because you're taking a shortcut, or you're escaping what you know to be your moral obligation. And your moral obligation stems naturally from your aims. And if you don't have an aim, well, then you're aimless. So that's not a solution. So along with the aims come the moral obligations. Then when you violate the moral obligations, you'll have a sense of that violation. It's like, well, you have to stop doing that. Or that's something you could do. You don't have to. You don't have to do any of this. But I would say that's where people should start. You start small. Clean up your room. Clean up your room. Clean up your room. Clean up your room. I had a girl come up to me last night. She said, I started cleaning up my room and it completely changed my life. She said, your room is an externalization of your mind. And that's right. That's exactly true. To the degree that you're in your room, the room is you. Now, that isn't how people think. That's okay. It doesn't matter if they think that way. That's how it is. So, straighten up what you can straighten up and quit saying things that make you feel weak. And then you'll know what to do next. Clean up your room. 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 Clean up your room.
The next question.
Do you have problems in your life that you're not addressing that you could solve? An answer is yes. An answer is yes. Do you have problems in your life that you're not addressing that you could solve? An answer is yes. An answer is yes. And it's an easy thing to figure out. You sit on your bed one morning and say, okay, there's some things that need to be done that I don't want to do, that I could do, that would make things better by the end of the day. What are they? Your conscience will deliver those suckers no time flat now. And then you might have to say, okay, well, how do I entice myself into doing a few of those? If you ask, instead of trying to force yourself to do it like you're a tyrant and a slave at the same time, you can usually negotiate with yourself so that you'll start to sort those things out. Sort them out. Put your house in order. And then move on. Move on.
Next question.
Do you have problems in your life that you're not addressing that you could solve? An answer is yes. An answer is yes. Do you have problems in your life that you're not addressing that you could solve? An answer is yes. An answer is yes. you have a practice domain. There are things that are within your grasp that you could fix. That you could fix. Fix them. And you'll learn. It will make you grow very, very rapidly. And then you'll be able to sort out more complex problems without making them worse.
Akira. He's got clout.
My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. Because you build your competence that way. It's like, I don't know how you can go out and protest the structure of the entire economic system if you can't keep your room organized.
Yeah, isn't that an issue with people, though, that they always want to enact some sort of control over the outside world when their inside is all fucked up?
My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. I think there's some truth in that. I think there is truth in that. I mean, people try to change the outside world for lots of ways, but many of those ways aren't just pure good. I was trying to produce something that was a counterposition to this idea that what you should do is go out and fix up other people. You know, that's just not right. My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. And then there's a New Testament line about that, something about, you know, not worrying too much about the speck in your neighbor's eye when you have a log in your eye. It's like, yes, no kidding, yes, no kidding, yes, no kidding, yes, 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 no kidding, yes, no kidding, yes, no kidding, yes, 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 no kidding. Is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward. My sense is that if you want to change the world, you start from yourself and work outward. Work outward. Work outward.
want to sort out your room and beautify it. And let's say that all you have is just a little room, like you're not rich, but you've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. Got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. But you've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. Well, a room is a place to sleep. And so if you set your room up properly, then you figure out how to sleep and when you should sleep and how you should sleep. And you figure out when you should wake up. And then you figure out, well, what clothes you should wear because they have to be arranged properly in your dresser. And then you have to have some place to put your clothes. If you're going to have some clothes, you have to figure out what you're going to wear those clothes to do, right? And then that means you have to figure out what you're going to do. And then your room has to serve that purpose because otherwise it isn't set up properly. And if it doesn't serve your purposes, you will be unhappy and not happy in the room because the way that we perceive the world is as a place to move from point A to point B in. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. And so what it means to set up your room is that you have to have somewhere to go that's worthwhile. The next thing is, well, maybe you have to make it beautiful. But that's not easy, right? That means you have to have some taste. And that doesn't mean you have to have money. It doesn't. Because you can be garish with money and you can be tasteful with nothing. You have to be creative in order to do that. And so then to beautify your room means that you also have to develop your capacity to be creative. And so then you can make your room shine. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. But then what'll happen is that if your family isn't together, they will interfere with that. When you start building this little microcosm of perfection, it'll evoke all the pathologies of everyone in your household. They'll wonder what the hell you're up to in there. And they won't necessarily be happy because if they're in a lowly place, the higher you move out of that, the more the place they're in looks bad. And you might say, well, what they should do is celebrate your victory over chaos and evil, but that isn't what will happen. What will happen instead is that they will attempt to pull you back down. And so what that means is that if you organize your room, then you're going to have to confront the devils in your house. And that's often a terrifying thing because some of those devils have lineages that go back many, many generations. And God only knows what you have to struggle with in order to overcome that. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you, space right in front of you, space right in front of you. You've got your damn room and you've got the space right in front of you that's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. It's a part of the cosmos that you can come to grips with. And so to sort yourself out and to fix up your room is a non-trivial matter, you know. We need to know who the competent people are, and we need to reward them. And even more importantly, we need to tell young people, hey, there's some hierarchies of competence out there. Like 1,000 of them. Go be a plumber, man. But be a good one, you know? Be an honest one. Because otherwise all you do is go out there and cause trouble. We don't need people to cause more trouble. We need people to solve problems. Solve problems. Solve problems. We need people to solve problems. Solve problems. Solve problems. We don't need people to cause more trouble. We need people to solve problems. Solve problems. Solve problems. Go be a plumber, man. Go be a plumber, man. Be a good one, you know? tradesman, and you can make a lot of money as a tradesperson. It's a bloody, reliable, honorable, forthright, productive way of making a living. And there is a hell of a lot of difference between a working man who knows what he's doing and one who doesn't. Both in terms of skill and ethics, right? And you work with someone who knows what they're doing, it's a bloody pleasure. They tell you what they're gonna do, they tell you how much it will cost, they go and do it, it works, and you pay them. Perfect. Everyone's happy. And that's what happens when you have genuine hierarchies of competence. Don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Satan, in Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan decides that he can do without the transcendent. Without God, he can do without God, he can do without God, and that's why he foments rebellion. It's something like that. And the consequence of that was that as soon as Satan decided that what he knew was sufficient and that he could do without the transcendent, which you might think about as the domain outside of what you know, something like that, immediately he was in hell. Things get large, and then they get too large, and then they collapse. And so, in 2008, when the politicians said, too big to fail, they got something truly backwards. The statement was reversed. It should have been so big it had to fail. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. When I read Paradise Lost, I was studying totalitarianism, and I thought, the poet, the true poet, like a prophet, is someone who has intimations of the future. Has intimations of the future. And maybe that's because the poetic mind, the philosophical or prophetic mind, is a pattern detector, and there are people who can detect the underlying, it's like the melody of a nation. Melody as in song. The song of a nation. And can see how it's going to develop across the centuries. You see that in Nietzsche, because Nietzsche, for example, in around 1860 or so, he prophesied what was going to happen in the 20th century. He said specifically that the specter of communism would kill millions of people in the 20th century. It's an amazing prophecy. Some people are very good at detecting patterns, and Milton, I think, was of that sort. I think he had intimations of what was coming as human rationality became more and more powerful, and technology became more and more powerful. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. And then Milton's warning was the rational mind that generates a production and then worships it as if it's absolute immediately occupies hell. And that's what I think the story of the Tower of Babel is about. It's a warning against the expansion of a system until it encompasses everything. It's a warning against totalitarian presumption. And so there's a utopian kind of vision there as well, as we can build a structure that's so large and encompassing that it can replace heaven itself. And so that the very notion of a utopia was anti-human, because we're not built for static utopia. We're built for a dynamic situation where there's demands placed on us and where there's the optimal amount of uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want utopian comfort and certainty. They want adventure and chaos and uncertainty. Human beings don't want Very frequently what I'm doing as a therapist is helping people have a life that would work, you know, and you can parameterize that. What do you need? How about some friends? How about an intimate relationship with someone that you can trust, that maybe has a future? That'd be good. How about a career that puts you in a dominance hierarchy somewhere, so at least you've got some possibility of rising, some possibility of stabilizing yourself, and a schedule and a routine, because no one can live without a routine. You just forget that. If you guys don't have a routine, I would recommend, you get one going, because you cannot be mentally healthy without a routine. You need to pick a time to get up, whatever time you want, but pick one and stick to it, because otherwise you dysregulate your circadian rhythms, they regulate your mood. And eat something in the morning. I had lots of clients who've had anxiety disorders. I had one client who was literally starving. Very smart girl. There was very little that she liked. She kind of tried to subsist on half a cup of rice a day. She came to me and said, I have no energy. I come home, all I want to do is watch the same movie over and over. Is that weird? And I thought, well, it depends on how hard you work. You know, it's a little weird, but whatever. You need to regulate your use of drugs and alcohol, most particularly alcohol, because that does in a lot of people. You need a family, like the family you have, your parents and all that. It'd be nice if you all got along, you could work on that. That's a good thing to work on. And then, you know, you probably need children at some point. And that's life. And that's life. That's what life is. Human beings have a nature. There's things we need. And that's life. That's what life is. Human beings have a nature. There's things we need. And if you're missing, you know, you may have a good reason to not be operating on one of those dimensions. It's not mandatory, but I can tell you that if you're not operating reasonably well on at least 3 of them, there's no way you're going to be psychologically thriving. And that's more pragmatic in some sense than psychological, right? Human beings have a nature. There's things we need. And if we have them, well, that's good. And if we don't have them, well, then we feel the lack. And so behavioral psychologists concentrate a lot more on that sort of thing. You know, it's practical. It's like strategizing. Make a career plan. Figure out how to negotiate, because that's bloody important. Figure out how to say what you need. Figure out how to tell the truth to people. Figure out how to listen to your partner in particular, because if you listen to them, they will actually tell you what they want. And sometimes you can give it to them and maybe they'll return the favor. And if you practice that for like 15 years, well, then maybe you're constantly giving each other what you want. Well, hooray, that would be good. And then there's two of you under most circumstances, and it's better to have two brains than one, because people think differently because of their temperament mostly. And so the negotiation is where the wisdom arises. And it's part of the transformation, the psychological transformation that's attendant on an intimate relationship, and one of the fundamental purposes of a long-term intimate relationship. And that's life. That's what life is. Human beings have a nature. There's things we need. And that's life. That's what life is. Human beings have a nature. There's things we need.
What were you like when I was 25? Well, I was obsessed. When I was 25 or so, I probably weighed about 138 pounds. I smoked like a pack of cigarettes a day. I drank tremendous amount of alcohol. My friends were heavy drinkers, and most of them dropped out of school by the time they were 15 or 16, went off to work on the oil rigs, and it was a rough town, and we drank a lot. I started when I was 14, and I had a lot of bad habits, and I wasn't in great shape physically. I was also still intellectually obsessed, as I am now. That would have been in 85. But I decided around then, about 85, 84, something like that year, that I was really going to try to get my act together. So I started doing that. First of all, I quit smoking. Well, that took a long time because I eventually had to quit drinking too in order to quit smoking. And I started working out, started playing sports, which I'd never done. I was a small kid. I'd been skipped a grade and I was small for my age, so sports were never really a domain of expertise for me. Although I skied and went trapping with my dad, 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 trapping with my trapping with my trapping with my dad, trapping with my dad, trapping with my dad, trapping with my trapping with my trapping with my dad.
What kind of relationship do you have with your father? Your real father? It's often ambivalent, right? There's an element of him that encouraged you, hopefully, because without the encouragement of your father, man, the world is a dismal place. It's very difficult to be a courageous person unless you have your father in body and spirit behind you. Because if your father rejects you or doesn't form a relationship with you, it's as if the spirit of civilization has left you outside the walls as of little worth. It's very difficult for people to recover from that. So the father should be an encouraging force, but can be a tyrannical and crushing force. And that's a very difficult thing to get right. If you're my son, then I should impose the highest standards of behavior on you. And I should always be judging what you're doing. I should be judging it with the aim of making the best in you come forward. But getting that balance exactly right is very difficult. It's like the mother who's too overprotective. I'll never let anything happen to you. It's like, well, maybe you actually want to have something happen to you. It's like, no, I'm going to make you strong so any number of things can happen to you. And when you need some care, I'll be there. But otherwise, like out into the world with you, that's the right attitude. And for the Father, it's like, get your bloody act together.
Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad.
I'm on your side. It's not because I want to destroy you or demean you or push you down in the dominance hierarchy, but because I want the best in you to emerge. And so you need standards. It's like, what are you doing wasting your life? There's way more than that to you. Get your act together and bring it out. And that's a message that people really want to hear if they have any sense at all. And generally, they do want to hear it. One of the things you can do for young people that no one's doing is to talk to them about responsibility. Everyone talks to young people about rights. It's like, we need our rights. It's like, oh God, how many rights do you need? You know, really, like you have more privileges than any people who've ever lived anywhere. Well, it's so dull to hear. That's so dull. It's so pathetic and demeaning that you have to be protected and have your rights. There's a huge marketplace for responsibility. That's what you want to talk to young people about. It's like life has meaning with responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has. And the higher degree of responsibility that you agree voluntarily to try to bear, the richer your life will be. And no one's ever told that, and it's the case.
Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dad. Dropping with my dropping with my dropping with my dad.
Damn, son.
You have 4 kids, say, well, that's plenty of responsibility. You're going to have meaning. It's going to be rough, you know, because it's complicated. You have a complicated job and you try to help the careers of the people around you. You try to solve tough problems and aid suffering and do all of that. It's like, it's weight. It's responsibility. There's glory in it. There's real glory in it. There's deep meaning in it. And young people are starving for that because no one ever tells them that. It's like, you're way more than you think. Man, stand up. Do something difficult. Do something difficult and heroic. Burst out of your bonds. It's like, that's a good message. It's a necessary message. Because we have to be more than we are. Because if we don't, we're not going to survive.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
The sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. And Noah began to be a husbandman, and he planted a vineyard. And he drank of the wine and was drunken, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brethren without. And Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed shall be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died.
and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. I remember thinking about this story. It's got to be 30 years ago. I think the meaning of the story stood out for me. When you read complicated material, sometimes a piece of it will stand out. It's like it glitters. That might be one way of thinking about it. You're in sync with it and you can understand what it means. And I think I understood what this part of the story of Noah meant. What nakedness meant in the story of Adam and Eve. To know yourself naked is to become aware of your vulnerability, your physical boundaries in time and space, and your fundamental physiological insufficiencies as they might be judged by others. There's biological insufficiency that's sort of built into you because you're a fragile, mortal, vulnerable, half-insane creature. That's just an existential truth. And so to become aware of your nakedness is to become self-conscious. That's what is revealed to Ham when he comes across his father naked. And so the question is, what does it mean to see your father naked? And especially in an inappropriate manner like this, it's as if Ham, he's insufficiently respectful of his father. And the question is exactly, what does the father represent? And you can say, well, there's the father that you have, and that's a human being, that's a man like other men. But then there's the father as such, and that's the spirit of the father. And insofar as you have a father, you have both at the same time. You have the personal father that's a man among other men, just like anyone else's father. But insofar as that man is your father, that means that he's something different than just another person. And what he is the incarnation of the spirit of the Father. And to see that, to disrespect that carelessly, Noah makes a mistake, right? He produces wine and gets himself drunk, and you might say, well, if he's sprawled out there for everyone to see, it's hardly Ham's fault if he stumbles across him. But the book is laying out a danger. The danger is that maybe you catch your father at his most vulnerable moment, and if you're disrespectful, then you transgress against the spirit of the Father. And if you transgress against the spirit of the Father and lose respect for the spirit of the Father, then that is likely to transform you into a slave. A slave. That's a very interesting idea. It's particularly germane, I think, to our current cultural situation. We're pushed constantly to see the nakedness of our father, so to speak, because of the intense criticism that's directed towards our culture, the patriarchal culture, so to speak. We're constantly exposing its weaknesses and vulnerabilities and, let's say, nakedness. There's nothing wrong with criticism, but the thing about criticism is the purpose of criticism is to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's not to burn everything to the ground, right? It's to say, well, we're going to carefully look at this. We're going to carefully differentiate. We're going to keep what's good and we're going to move away from what's bad. But the point of the criticism isn't to identify everything as bad. It's to separate what's good from what's bad so that you can retain what's good and move towards it. Retain what's good and move towards it, so that you can retain what's good and move towards it. Retain what's good and move towards it. And to be careless at that is deadly, because you're inhabited by the spirit of the Father, right? Insofar as you're a cultural construction, to be disrespectful towards that means to undermine the very structure that makes you not all of what you are, certainly a good portion of what you are. If you pull the foundation out from underneath that, what do you have left? You can hardly manage on your own. It's just not possible. You're a cultural creation. You're a cultural creation. Retain what's good and move towards it. Retain what's good and move towards it. So that you can retain what's good and move towards it. 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 So that you can retain what's good and move towards it. Retain what's good and move towards it. And so Ham makes this desperate error and is careless about exposing himself to the vulnerability of his father, or something like that. He does it without sufficient respect. And the judgment is that not only will he be a slave, but so will all of his descendants. And he's contrasted with the other two sons who, I suppose, are willing to give their father the benefit of the doubt, something like that. And so when they see him in a compromising position, they handle it with respect and don't capitalize on it. And maybe that makes them strong. That's what it seems to me. And so I think that's what that story means. It has something to do with respect. 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 You know, and the funny thing about having respect for your culture, and I suppose that's partly why I'm doing the biblical stories, is because they're part of my culture. They're part of our culture, perhaps, but they're certainly part of my culture. And it seems to me that it's worthwhile to treat that with respect, to see what you can glean from it. And not kick it when it's down, let's say. It has something to do with respect. 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 It has something to do with respect. 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 So that's how the story of Noah ends. The thing too is Noah is actually a pretty decent incarnation of the spirit of the Father, which I suppose is one of the things that makes Ham's misstep more egregious. I mean, Noah just built an ark and got everybody through the flood, man, you know? It's not so bad. And so maybe the fact that he happened to drink too much wine one day wasn't enough to justify humiliating him. And you know, I don't think it's pushing the limits of symbolic interpretation to note on a daily basis that we're all contained in an ark. You could think about that as the ark that's been bequeathed to us by our forefathers. That's the tremendous infrastructure that we inhabit, that we take for granted, because it works so well, that protects us from things that we can't even imagine, and we don't have to imagine because we're so well protected.